In this video, we're going to study the properties of rectangles. Recall that rectangles is a special form of parallelogram. Therefore, it carries all the characteristics of parallelogram. That means the opposite sides are congruent as well as parallel. The opposite angles are congruent. Consecutive angles are supplementary, and the diagonals bisect each other. That's what we discussed from the last unit. For rectangles, there are two additional properties that are unique to them. First one is all four angles are right angles. You know this already. Second one is that the diagonals not only bisect each other, they are also congruent to each other. Okay, so with these six properties, let's see how we can use them to help us solve these problems. We already know all of these quadrilaterals are rectangle. That's given. Therefore, QR in this case has to be 10 because QR and PS are congruent. SR and PQ has to be congruent at 24. SQ is more challenging. There's no information given about the diagonals. However, let's look at this. If we have a rectangle, we know that the angles must be 90 degrees. Therefore, I've got a right triangle right there at SPQ. And so SQ is the hypotenuse. So hypotenuse squared should equal 10 squared plus 24 squared. That's 100 plus 576, I think. So check my math. You should have 676 as x squared. Now, if you take a square root of 676, that should come out to be 26. If SQ is 26, PR must be congruent to SQ, so that's 26 as well. Now, if the whole thing is 26, remember they bisect each other. The diagonals bisect each other. T would be called the midpoint, so TQ or QT is half of SQ at 13. Okay? So just to recap, you need to borrow the concept that this is a right angle. Therefore, we have a right triangle, and you can use Pythagorean theorem whenever that's convenient for you. So let's look at example 2. If I'm asked to find AC, this time AE is given, and E is the midpoint, so AC is twice as long at 30. If AC is 30, BD has to be 30 because they are congruent. BE is this half, right? So if I know BD is 30, this half has to be 15 as well. Also notice that we've got an isosceles triangle there. In fact, we've got 4 isosceles triangle in the rectangle, right? Now AB has to be congruent to DC, so that would be 27. And here we go. We don't have BC. We do not have BC. I'm going to call this X. However, I know one leg. I also know the hypotenuse. The hypotenuse BD is 30. So 30 squared should equal 27 squared plus X squared. And let me see. That would be, I think, 171 equals X squared. And it's approximately 13.1 if you use your calculators. Okay. Let's look at number 3. Number 3 is all about angles. So let's see. We're asked to find angle MJK. MJK is right here, and that would be a 90 degrees angle. And MJL is this portion, right? MJL is this portion. If this whole thing is 90 degrees and here is 27, so this should be 90 90 degrees minus 27 should give you 63 degrees. And if this is 63 degrees, we're asked to find JLK, which is the angle here. Remember, these two sides, opposite sides are parallel. Opposite sides are parallel, and therefore these two angles are alternate interior angles, and they should be congruent. And KML is right here. And KML should be congruent to JKM because they're alternate interior angles, right? Remember earlier we said that we've got a isosceles triangle here because the diagonals are not only congruent, they also bisect each other. So JN is congruent to NK. And if these two sides are congruent, these two angles are congruent. So that angle has to be 27 degrees. Finally, MNL. If this is 27 degrees, the interior, ultimate interior angle is 27 here. If this is 27 degrees, this one has to be 27 degrees as well, because again, these two sides are congruent to each other. And so the calculation for this big angle in the middle is 180 minus 27 minus 27 again, and that should give us 126 degrees. 180 minus 54 is 126 degrees. Number 4, here we have this angle here is 64, so we know this has to be ZVY has to be 64. Let's find XWY. XWY is here. So again, look at this triangle WVX. If these two are the same, and so which means 2x plus 64 should equal 180 degrees. If you solve for x, x should come out to be 58 degrees. So that's 58 degrees. And then next is YXZ. YXZ. So it's this one here. That would be simply 90 degrees of WXY minus this 58 degrees that we just found. It should give us 32 degrees. And next one is WVZ. WVZ, which is, I'm going to use a green one, maybe more obvious. So it's right where this green dot is, right? So this, remember that, look at this angle where the green dot is, and this 64 degree forms a straight line. So that's 180 degrees. Therefore, it's 180 minus 32 degrees. And I should have 150, 140. I'm sorry, I made a mistake there. Not 34, not 32 degrees, minus 64 degrees. Because that's 64 degrees is complementary to the green dot. So I should have 116 degrees. Now XWZ, that's easy, 90 degrees. XZY should be, again, these are parallel lines. These two are alternate interior angles. And if this angle is 58 degrees, XZY should be 58 degrees. Okay? Last problem on this sheet, we've got both angles and sides. I'm going to leave you with the exercise. You should pause the video and I will give you the answers on this, and you can come back and get the answers once you complete this practice. And here are the answers. So let's look at some of these algebraic questions. Right here we have a rectangle, a rectangular, and we're asked to find EF. So we know that EF is given at 7x minus 39. We also know that EF is congruent to CD or DC. So if you set it up like that and minus 3x on both sides, then plus 39 on both sides, you should be able to figure out that x is 11. So therefore, if you plug that back into 7x minus 39, and that should give you EF's length is, no, 7x is not 44, 7x is 77. 77 minus 39, you should have 38. Okay? Now, second question, if RT, one of the diagonals, is 5x minus 14, US, the other diagonal, is 2x plus 10, and we have to find VT, which is half here, right? So we know the two diagonals for a rectangle, for a rectangular shape, they have to be congruent. So then you just solve for x. X should equal 8, which tells you that RT should be 5 times 8 minus 14. That gives you 26. And VT is half of RT. Therefore, I have 13 as my final answer. For number 8, we're asked to find JL, which is the diagonal. We're given JM, which is right here, we're given MK. And because this is a rectangle, these two should be congruent. So we simply set up the equation as x plus 17 equals 5x minus 23. And you should have x equals 10. Now, in order to find JL, I can only find, for now, I can only find half of JL, which is JM, because JM is x plus 17 at 27. And JL, obviously, is just twice as long at 54. For number 8, if VW is right here at 9x minus 1, SU, the big whole thing, diagonal, is 16 minus 12. We have to find WT. We have to find this part here. So if I know this part and I know this whole thing, I just need to half of that. So if I do WU equals half of SU should equal 8x minus 6, right? And then therefore this side and this side should be congruent. So 9x minus 11 should equal 8x minus 6. And you should have x equals 5 in this case. And then you just plug it in to find VW, because we said VW and UW are exactly the same length. So you should have 34. So your final answer is WT equals VW equals 30. So number 10, we're asked to find the angle measure of BCE, which is right in here. It is, what is that angle measure? And in order to do that, we have to find the angle measure for DCE first, which is 11x minus 3. And the other information that's given is this, this portion of the other right angle. So we know that this angle here and this angle here are alternate interior. Therefore, they must be congruent. Excuse me. So you just set it up. Once you set that up, you solve for x. 7 minus 3, that should give me 4x equals 8. X equals 2. Okay, and the angle measure for DCE, you can now calculate that as 11 times 2 minus 3, which is 19 degrees. And as we talked about earlier, now I just use my right angle in this corner right here, which is 90 degrees minus 19. I should have 71 degrees. Okay. Number 11, we're asked to find angle measure for JHI, which is right here. So how do we do this one? We're given this part of the angle with an x variable, and this part of the angle with a variable. So, and we also know that these two angles adds up together can give me 90 degrees. So that's what I'm going to do. I add them up together. I should have 90 degrees. And if I simplify that, that's 15, I think, right? 90 degrees. And if you do your math, you should have 105. And that gives me x equals 7. If x equals 7, I can just plug it in and find angle angle GJK, which is this part. GJK equals 3 times 7 plus 2. That's a times. And I should have 23 degrees. And therefore, my angle JHI should equal 23 degrees. Because if I know this part, in this green angle here, I should know this too, because they are congruent, because they are alternate interior angles. Okay? So that's number 11. Let's look at the last two. Find angle measure for XZW. XZW is right here. How do we do this one? We have this and we have this, even though we have a variable. But we also know that in this triangle, XYZ right here, because this is 90 degrees, these two must add up to 90 degrees to make it 180 degrees, right? So let's do just that. X plus 20 is my first angle. 5x minus 8 is my second angle, and they should equal 90 degrees. And if you do your algebra, you should find out x equals 13. And after that, all you need to do is just to do some more substitutions, plugging it in. Find the angle measure for YXZ, which is right here. That would be 5 times 13 minus 8. That's 65 minus 8, which should give you 57 degrees, right? If you have this part as 57 degrees, we're asked to find angle measure for XZW. XZW, this part and this part are alternate interior, so they should be congruent at 50. Last question is slightly more tricky than average. So we're asked to find what x is. We know this angle, we also know this angle 134. Notice that if we know 134, we should know how to calculate these supplementary angle right here, 180 minus 134, right? So in this triangle here, DGH, I know two angles. What about this angle here? And remember we talked about in a rectangle, the diagonals are bisected by each other and bisecting each other, and because they're also congruent, so half of each diagonal are also congruent, and therefore these two sides are congruent and these two angles have to be congruent. So in other words, this angle is also 5x plus 7. So now if I have 5x plus 7 plus the second angle 5x plus 7, and then This angle is 180 minus 134. That should give me 46 degrees. These three angles should add up to 180 degrees, right? So that's 10x, that's 14, 14 plus 46, that's 60, equals 180. And then you do the rest of it, x should equal 12. That's your final answer right there. Okay, so that's all for rectangles. I'll make a separate video for rhombus and squares. Thank you guys.